Hello, I'm Rosemary, and today I'd like to talk to you about the Benromach 10-year-old whisky. Now, it's 43% ABV. It's a Speyside, but it's about as far north in Speyside as you can possibly get. Right on the road, sort of from Inverness to Aberdeen along the top. Quite an old distillery, and I've only just started nosing it. Late 1800s, I expect it says when it was established. It's one that I've actually been to. 1898. There we are. You see, I could have possibly have remembered that. We were there on our last trip coming up north, trying to decide where we were going to live. Well, I think actually we decided that we were going to live in Orkney, but we were just looking to whether to have a house built. Is this all irrelevant? Yes, I think it probably is. And we didn't. So, on the nose, just so not what you expect from a typical Speyside whisky. And definitely out of the the sort of the standard fruitier whiskies, more accessible whiskies perhaps, that we expect from Speyside, because this nose is all about peat. And I was really surprised when we went to Benromach about how peaty the whiskies were, or indeed are. And any of you who've been following me for some years will know how deeply attached I am to Douglas Lang's Scallywag, which is their blended Speyside malt whisky, and that's got a real peaty kick in the end of it, and I often wonder whether that's got a tad of the old Benromach in it. So really big, fruity but peaty nose. Now, at the moment, the Benromach is Whisky of the Month in the Brig Larder here in Orkney, but if you're watching this not in February 2022, but say in August 2025, that will be of no interest to you whatsoever, so I apologise. But at the moment there's an offer with 2 of these Benromach glasses. Now they are an incredibly different shape from the Glencairn. I hold that against my green jumper, or perhaps like that. I mean, they're so different. The Glencairn has got that tulip shape to it, whereas this is rather more like yours truly, curvaceous and somewhat large in the hand. So I really wonder whether the distillery has decided that this shape of glass is the shape for them, because their whisky is so really very, very different in nose and character to many Speysides. So definitely the smaller nose on the tulip glass does accentuate the smoke, whereas here it's quite lost. So poor me, I'm only doing this for you, dear viewer. I've got 2 whiskies. So yeah, really interesting. Initially, you think, wow, this is all about smoke and peat. Well, I should say peat. It's all about peat. But there's such a wallop of great big fruit at the end. And for me, it's not just the expected, apples, green apples and pears, etc. But there's almost something quite pineapple-y about this whisky. It's certainly got a hint of the tropics to it. And it's very, very different. That is so different, and really not at all what I expected. So, second sip, you know the trick, don't you? Oh yes, second sip, much more balanced, and that is like a Caribbean barbecue, with fruit skewers. Has got so much sort of bonfiriness about it, but this huge fruit, and I'm really intrigued about what fruits it is in there, because it is more tropical than I would expect from the standard bourbon barrel usage. So now I'm going to go with their glass shape. And as I say, that is interesting. That nose has changed completely in the Benromach glass. And that's all about fruit now and hardly anything at all about peat. I've got a friend called Pete up the road. He might be a bit upset about this. So, oh, that is extraordinary, and that is so interesting, because using the Benromach glass, all you get is fruit up front, and then you get your pepper and allspice dancing on your tongue at the end of it, but you get this lovely peat follow through. So it's honestly, it's like two different whiskies. 2 free glasses at the moment. Did I mention that? That is quite extraordinary, dear viewer. Now, I wonder what will happen at all, or I wonder what will happen when we add a little drop of water. So I'm just going to put a tiddly drop in both of my glasses. And I imagine that, especially with that huge swirly area, that's a technical term for doing what I was just doing, in the Benromach glass, that is amazing. I mean, I've got all sorts of different shapes of glasses, and it is quite fun to play with them, but just, this fishbowl shape, they have really come up with the perfect glass for their style of whiskey. So just a couple of drops of water with that. And I mean, I don't know at the moment whether the depth of peat that I've got in my mouth, which is from, sipping and tasting at the very start of this, I don't know whether that's the residual in the finish that's in my throat, but this is almost unpeated to me now. And it's a jolly nice dram. So I've added the water. Oh, all of a kerfuffle. Yes, there's barely any peatiness on the nose at all now, even with the traditional Glencairn tulip-shaped glass. So, and it has actually settled down to something akin to the whiskey that I've got in my Benromach glass. And just to remind you, it's the Benromach 10-year-old, about 43% proof. But it's absolutely fascinating, and I wish you were here so that you could taste this with me. But I actually prefer it from this glass, so I'm going to be trying out some of my other whiskies in this glass to see, how I get on with those. Do my eyes keep flashing at you? I'm trying to sit by my whiskey barrel, so I've got something to put my glasses on, but it's in the middle of the afternoon, and so the sun is coming in the window. But quite honestly, we've had such rotten weather here in Orkney that I'm not going to complain about that. So I have a dilemma. I've got 2 glasses with whiskey in my hands, and I'm probably going to drink them both. So, Benromach 10-year-old, a really, really nice and very, very different Speyside whiskey. I've bought it because it's Whiskey of the Month in one of our excellent local off-licenses. The big question is always, would I buy it again? Do you know, I haven't had a Benromach for years, and I think I certainly would. And also, it's really good for me because although this is very much an entry-level whisky from this distillery, I did see a whisky friend of mine raving about a much more aged whisky from them. I think it was a 40-year-old, and saying it was almost like his desert island whisky. And I was slightly surprised, but seeing the youthful genius in this glass, I think I might just have to arrange to pop down and see him and see if he's got any of his 40-year-old left. So, Benromach, certainly one to keep in the drinks cupboard. Cheers. See you next time. Oh, that's a very nice dram.